Hello everyone, welcome to the Season 2 reveal for Triforce Blitz. We're really excited to show you all the new things that Elagatua and other developers have been working really hard to bring you. I'm going to start this off by saying thank you to everyone for showing up to this or watching this video later. Triforce Blitz as a game mode has basically just gone off the charts, is launching to the moon, and we love every moment of it. I'm Dastar. I'm going to just basically recap what all of Season 1 was about and for any new faces in the audience. And then after that, I'm going to hand it off to Elagatua, and he's going to explain all the new stuff that's going to happen. So, people who know what Season 1 was about, sorry, bear with me for a few minutes. We're just going to quickly cover everything, and then we'll have the new stuff. For those who are new and want to learn what Triforce Blitz is about, strap in. I'll take you on a little ride. Without further ado, let's get right into this overview here and get y'all up to speed. First and foremost, massive shoutouts to Spell. Spell designed and maintains the Triforce Blitz website, and with Elagatua, set up the ability to play this mode with all of the integration and coding necessary. This very clearly could not be possible without them. So Triforce Blitz is a version of Ocarina of Time Randomizer's Triforce Hunt game mode. There are going to be 3 Triforce pieces somewhere in Hyrule, either in chess, minigames, freestanding by the river, whatever. Find all 3 and you warp straight to the credits. Ganon doesn't exist and can't hurt you. What makes this mode special are the combination of several settings and some brand new things to make these quick, enjoyable experiences, even if Randobot decides that it chose violence this morning. First of all, every seed has a 2-hour time limit. Regardless of how bad you've performed, regardless of how bad the logic is, regardless of any factors whatsoever, after 2 hours, the seed's done. It doesn't force you to stop, but that's when everything's done. That's when you stop playing. That's when you realize, I could have done this better. I could have done this. Let's look at the spoiler log, figure out what I did wrong here. If in under 2 hours you do not collect all 3, if this is a race, you will be judged by how many pieces you found, and if the same amount of your opponent, who found it fastest. The Season 1 of Triforce Blitz introduced 2 new types of settings, 2 new types of hints, path hints and wanderer hints, while still having a few always and sometimes hints that most players are used to. It's a very powerful hint system, we think, that leads you directly towards your progression and makes it so that it's a lot easier to find your path in the game. And to make it even better, there are several quality of life settings in play that will make all these slow sections go by faster. It becomes less of a slog, and it doesn't ruin the experience. And let's get into that a little bit. So this is what makes Triforce Blitz a unique combination of different types of settings. First of all, you have vanilla spawns. Usually you have one, if not both ages, the spawns are randomized. In this game, they're just vanilla. Link's House and Temple of Time. Simple enough. A lot of the slow checks that are in this game that make things sloggy, or you just have to think about a lot later because you need a lot of pieces for it, they're either gone completely or they're shortened. Some examples of which are Skulltulas, Skull Mask, Frogs 2, the Bigoron's claim check. The trade quest is just the claim check. You don't have to worry about any of the previous parts. Chickens and Child Kakariko. You only have to pick up 3 chickens. It makes it so it's not a terrible check. Cough. In addition to that, all chests will have chest size matches contents, and the texture of it will also match the CSMC CTMC settings. What this means is that you can easily tell, really fast, if this chest is worth your time or not. You see that there's a chest in the distance, but it's small. You can skip it. You don't have to waste your time on it. It's a very big quality of life upgrade that has come a long way in the last several months, and it's here. However, you can get baited, because bomb shoes, those little tickets to the out of logic train, they can also be found in the big chest. Just a little bit of a curveball for you. In addition, Boss Keezy is set up, so you can go into a dungeon and you do not need to find a boss key in order to go fight the boss. You can walk in, and if you have the items to get there, just go straight to the boss room. Which brings me to this next point, the dungeon shortcuts. Forest, Temple, and Jabu Jabu. They're temples or dungeons that have just simply take longer than you want them to do, especially when you just want to go in there and kill the boss. You don't even want to bother with the locations for the items. You can. In Forest Temple, the elevator starts up, and you can just take it down and go straight to Phantom Cannon. And in Jabu Jabu, the platform in that first circular room is already lowered, so you can go straight to that, the switch and the web door, which makes it real quicker to finish those dungeons. Ganon's Castle is also in play because you only need 2 dungeon rewards, and since you start the game with one of them, you just have to beat 1 dungeon. Walk into Forest Temple, go down the elevator, beat Phantom Ganon. Walk into Dodongo's Cavern, run through it real quick, beat King Dodongo. Get 1 dungeon reward, you can go into Ganon's Castle and have access to all of those checks. And of course, as I touched on before, unique hint systems that are generally designed to make everything a lot easier for you. Let's go ahead and talk about that a little bit. So this is the hint distribution for what players already know as Triforce Blitz hints. I'm just going to quickly run through this because there's no point in talking about this because some of it may not be accurate anymore. Outside of the Temple of Time, you'll find 4 hint stones, 3 of which will tell you what your path counts are to find those Triforce pieces, and we'll talk about those in just a second. The 4th one will always be a path hint of this location is on the path of, etc. You will find up to 5 Baron hints. You will always find Ocarina of Time and Nocturne hints somewhere in the world. After those have all been placed, Wanderer hints, which again we'll talk about in a minute, will fill any remaining Gossip Stones after those have been placed. And if somehow Path, Baron, and Wanderer have been placed, and we still have empty hint stones, we'll get sometimes hints. And these can definitely mess with how you're thinking about this seed if you aren't careful. The Path and Baron hints will always prioritize dungeon locations over the overworld locations, because that's where you can find the Triforce pieces. So that's also another good fact to take into account. But please remember that there is no limit to how many dungeons can be hinted by the Path and Baron hints. Path counts, as I mentioned, unique to Triforce Blitz. You will see here examples of the 3 paths. Please note that the game does not have, when you pick up the Triforce pieces, they are not labeled as which piece they are. You will just find a piece of the Triforce. It will not say, this is the Triforce of Power. It is up to you to use the logic and hint that you've found and determine which one is which and where the other pieces are. As you see here, it gives you a number. That means it requires that many unique, logically required items, songs, magics, whatever, to get to that location. So, the Path of Courage just requires 2 unique items. For all we know, it could be on King Dodongo, in which case it probably needs, what, strength and bombs? Maybe just bombs? I don't know. You have to constantly be thinking about what items got you to that location, and what did you find on that path? Because that is what unlocks the Triforce pieces. To help you with that, you'll get the actual path hints, which are similar to the Way of the Hero hints that you may be familiar with. You will always find these at the Temple of Time at the beginning of the game. They're usually grabbed really early, just like a pedestal check. It's very good information to have, so you can keep your mind open to how many things you're looking for before you start diving into dungeons. It explains, like I said, how many logically required items are needed to find that location, or to unlock that location, excuse me. And when you get a lower number, it's generally, in my opinion, more difficult to find the piece because there's a wider range of places it can be. As everyone knows, when you play a randomizer, you find the early sphere items, it opens up in a shotgun style. Like, there's more things that open, and more things that open, and more things that open. And the earlier those numbers mean, the more quickly you can get into that location that supposedly has that piece. For example, DC with just needing a strength or a hammer or bombs, versus Shadow Temple, which needs Nocturne, Dins, Hovers, Hookshot, Lens, Magic, all that sort of stuff. So it's really a way to think about, okay, well, this number's low. Maybe I need to start diving dungeons earlier. This number's high. Maybe I can put off going to Dodongo's Cavern, things like that. It all helps with your routing. But there's a few nuances to it, but that's not for this right here. But what is for right here are the Wanderer hints. In addition to the path hints, which are similar to Way of the Hero, which tell you, hey, this is where you're going to want to go. It is hard required by the seed. The Wanderer hints point towards logically required items, but they're not your only option available for progression. They are not the unique path. As an example, you could find 3 strength upgrades in Mito's house. First of all, if you find 3 strength upgrades in Mito's house, send me that seed. I want to see it. But if the piece is an adult spirit, then those strengths could be the Wanderer, because you only needed 2 of them. It's telling you that there is an extra thing there that you didn't need. And therefore, it tells you, the game's trying to tell you, this will get you there, but it is not hard required to go to this specific thing. These can sometimes also be traps, because it might say that Shadow Temple is the way of the Wanderer, and inside there you might find a wallet, so you can go buy a Goron tunic, and things like that. It's very baity. Hyrule Field is on the way of the Wanderer, as you see in that example at the bottom. That could be great. Maybe you can find a bow in the at the Boulder of Destiny. You know, maybe you can find something really useful there. Maybe there's just another bow somewhere else, and that's why this is a Wanderer thing. It's equally available to you. So it's a interesting idea, and it's something that is very cool to see implemented here. Okay, you've all heard me talking long enough. Let's finish up this quick overview and get back to the actual important stuff. Season 1, summarized. Find the 3 Triforce pieces and win. They're only going to be in dungeons. Hard rule of the game. You cannot find a Triforce piece outside of a dungeon. By the way, please note these dungeons include side dungeons, like The Well, or GTG, or Ice Cavern. There's a 2-hour time limit for every seed, and there's a specific tiebreaker that's in place based on how fast you found them and how many you found. There's a very strong hint distribution between the path and the Wanderer hints and the always hints. It's all there to help guide players towards the right location. And after 2 hours, regardless of how well you played, you can just straight up throw the seed in the garbage can. It's done. You don't ever have to look at that seed again unless you just want to study it and learn stuff about it. It's very simple, but the nuances to each seed are massive, and that's really cool. Season 1 had the first Triforce Blitz tournament that was hosted by our friends over at the Silver Gauntlets. So quick shout-outs. That had I think it had a turnout of something like 60-some players. I think Elagatua can correct me on that, because I think he had the numbers, and well, so did I, but that's not the point. We ended up having to run 2 brackets, so shout-outs to Favio and Netharian, who are our 2 winners from Season 1. And of course, once again, thank you to everyone who's contributed towards Triforce Blitz that has brought it to what it is right now. Obviously, Elagatua and Spell, the Silver Gauntlets for hosting the tournament, the devs who have put the code into the actual game. But now that you've put up with my voice on this recap for so long, let's get into the actual new stuff. The reason you're actually here for what's coming up in Season 2 of Triforce Blitz. Elagatua, I know, has been waiting very patiently for his chance to talk, and he has been unable to wait to just give you this information because it just looks so cool and so awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and pass this over to him, and we'll see you guys in a little bit. See ya.
Thanks, Dastar, for the recap. Now it's me, Elagatua, and let's get to the good stuff. Season 2. What is new? There are a lot of hint distribution changes for Season 2. The biggest changes are all in this area, and we're going to go over everything else first, and then come back around to the hints. The generator is up to date with the latest dev version. This includes everything that is new with the 7X release. The most notable thing is support for custom models, but there's other additions like pot sanity if you really are dying to roll your own custom Triforce Blitz seeds. Free Scarecrow is now enabled. Thank you to HoloLogic, who I think was the first person to point this out, among many others who have suggested this. I think I've mentioned it publicly a bunch of times that this was coming, so it shouldn't be too much of a surprise. If you've never seen Free Scarecrow, it means that you don't need to go to Lake Hylia to set the Scarecrow. You get it for free as adult, and all you need to do is pull out your ocarina and the Scarecrow will appear automatically. Lastly, there's a new hint type, and I'll cover this later along with the updated hint distribution. Another major change in Season 2 is labels for the Triforce pieces when you find them. In Season 1, when you found a Triforce piece, you might not know which one it was. Going forward, you'll see the name of the Triforce piece just like in this image. I played a bunch of seeds with this, and after getting used to it, I really like it, so I think that as you play a few seeds, it'll grow on you. This was made possible with a lot of consultation and examples from Fennel, so thank you for taking the time to answer my dumb questions and help me with some of the setup required to make this happen. There's a few important things that I wanted to clarify, even if they aren't necessarily new to Season 2. First, the path hint selection priority is staying the same as in Season 1. Some background on this. In the latest dev version of the randomizer, it will select path locations for hints from the total pool of items first, and then it will choose the path that is hinted. We are not using this newer method of choosing path hints. Path hints in Season 2 of Triforce Blitz will be selected using the same method as Season 1 of Triforce Blitz. This is also the same method that was used in the Season 5 tournament. Next, vanilla spawns are staying the same. I had considered introducing random spawns at some point, but in the end, if it's not broken, don't fix it. Third, jumping over KZ is still allowed. I know it's banned for the Season 6 tournament, but it's not banned in Triforce Blitz, so feel free to weep on over at your leisure. Alright, let's talk about hints. This is where the fun begins. So, there's a number of small changes to the hints that I will go over first. The path hint at the Temple of Time is now single copy. There are 3 path count hints, as we covered earlier, and that takes up 3 of the Gossip Stones at the Temple of Time. But there is a 4th Gossip Stone at the Temple of Time, and in Triforce Blitz, that 4th Gossip Stone will always have a path hint. That's something that was always the case in Season 1 as well, but now whichever location gets hinted there will not have a duplicate. The duplicate is unnecessary as you're pretty much always getting this hint at the start of your seed, and this helps make the number of hints even overall. Thank you to Ramond for the suggestion. This was 100% his idea. The 20 Skulltula hint is now at the Skulltula house. One thing that is new in the generator is the ability to have Skulltula house hints. So we are removing the always hint for 20 skulls, and we are just moving that to the Skulltula house. You go to the Skulltula house, and you talk to the reward giver for 20 Skulltulas, and he will tell you what the reward is. Even though we are removing the always hint, the 20 skulls check still behaves similar to an always hint check. So Kakariko Village cannot be hinted path through the 20 skull item, but it could be counted as part of the path count. We are removing 1 Baron hint and going down to 4 instead of 5. I'll go over why later. We are keeping the same dungeon priority as Season 1, so Baron dungeon areas will still be higher priority for hints than Baron overworld locations. Lastly, we are getting rid of the guaranteed Wanderer hint. In Season 1, we had an odd number of hints, and we had this extra hint slot that was floating around, and we just stuck a Wanderer hint on there as a guaranteed Wanderer hint. But in Season 2, we have an even number of hints, and so there's no need for the 1 copy Wanderer hint to be in the distribution, so that is now gone. Okay, with all that covered, let's go over what the new hint distribution looks like in Season 2. There's still 3 path count hints at the Temple of Time, exactly the same as Season 1. We have the 1 path hint at the Temple of Time that is the 1 copy hint. We now have 2 always hints, OOT and Nocturne, 2 copies each, same as Season 1. As we mentioned before, the 20 Skulltula hint is now at the Skulltula house. There are 9 path hints floating around the world on Gossip Stones that are 2 copies each, and with the other 1 at the Temple of Time, it's still 10 path hints total. The total number hasn't changed. 4 Baron hints, 2 copies each. Baron hints work the same as always. There's just 1 less than Season 1. You may have noticed that we've freed up a few slots, and you might be wondering, what will we be using them for? Well, we have a new hint type for Season 2 called Unlock Hints. And we have freed up 3 spots for Unlock Hints, and these will be 2 copies each, and I'll be going over the details for those very shortly. Wanderer Hints will fill any unfilled spots, and if you do the math for everything above, there's actually no empty slots. So there's no guaranteed Wanderer Hint spots. But if for some reason there's less than 10 path hints that are generated, or whatever the situation is where we don't have all of our hint spots filled, then Wanderer Hints are there to fill in those spots. Wanderer Hints now have a 50% chance of being Unlock Hints. You probably have no idea what that means, but we'll be covering that very shortly. Finally, sometimes hints are there to fill any unfilled spots left over after everything else. 1 copy each. They're not supposed to be useful. The idea is that if you find a sometimes hint, you know that you're playing a really short seed. There's not a whole lot of items required, so you should probably play like a psychopath. All right, let's get into these unlock hints. Unlock hints are a totally new hint type unique to Season 2 of Triforce Blitz. Here's 2 examples of potential unlock hints. They say that Kokiri Sword unlocks the way to the boomerang, and they say that Din's Fire unlocks the way to Rudo's letter. In the first image, what this means is that Kokiri Sword logically locks the location where the boomerang is. The simplest explanation for this hint could be that the boomerang is just in Deku Tree somewhere. That'd be pretty obvious, but it doesn't have to be that obvious. It could be some kind of chain. So for example, Kokiri's sword could lock the Force Medallion, and the Force Medallion could lock Song of Storms, and the boomerang could be in Bottom of the Well. That would be possible. Or the Kokiri sword locks 3 bomb bags in Deku Tree, and the boomerang could be bomb locked somewhere in the overworld. Who knows? But the Kokiri sword will always logically lock the second item. For the second example, Din's Fire unlocks the way to Rudo's letter. The obvious explanation would be that Shadow Temple has Rudo's letter, but again, it doesn't have to be that simple. It could be something silly like Spirit Temple Key Logic, our favorite, or Haunted Wasteland, or Composer Grave that leads to Rudo's letter down the line. So this hint tells you the sequence, but it doesn't necessarily tell you that they directly lock each other one after the other. It's just one comes before the other in the sequence. Both items in the unlock hint are guaranteed to be on the path to at least 1 Triforce piece. So even if you already had both of the items and you knew that one item locked the other item, the unlock hint confirms that both of these items are on the path to something, even if it doesn't tell you which path it is. Unlock hints cannot have songs as the second item, so you'll never have something like Bomb Bag unlocks the way to the Song of Storms, or Hookshot unlocks the way to Minuetta Forest, or something like that. However, the first item can be a song, so you could have Zelda's Lullaby unlocks the way to the Hookshot. The locked item can overlap with a path hint pointing to its location. However, there cannot be 2 unlock hints pointing to the same second item. I'll give you an example because this one is a little bit tricky to think about. Let's say that Kokiri Sword is in the Zora's Fountain Iceberg for the Triforce of Power in Deku Tree. That means that a potential path hint for Kokiri Sword would be they say that Zora's Fountain is on the path of power. In that same seed, you could also have a hint that said, they say that Zelda's Lullaby unlocks the way to the Kokiri Sword. Because Zelda's Lullaby always locks entry into adult domain, so Zelda's Lullaby is always going to lock the Zora's Fountain iceberg. The path hint pointing to the Kokiri Sword and the unlock hint pointing to the Kokiri Sword can be in the same seed. However, you could not then have a third hint that said Rudo's letter also unlocks the way to the Kokiri Sword, because we already have an unlock hint that is pointing to the Kokiri Sword, so we can't have another one, even though Rudo's letter does in fact unlock the way to the Kokiri Sword. So once there's one unlock hint pointing to a particular item, there cannot be a second unlock hint pointing to that same item. Unlocked item locations are weighted by the number of items locking that location. This sounds really complicated, but actually it's straightforward. It just means that you're more likely to get unlock hints pointing to locations deep in the seed. So in a path count 20 seed, you're unlikely to get really early game items showing up in your unlock hints. This means you're more likely to get late game information, so hopefully not something that becomes useless 15 minutes into the seed. Locations for the first item in the hint are also weighted just like the second item. So both the first and second items in the unlock hint are likely to be deeper in the seed. Finally, items not locked by any other items cannot be selected for an unlock hint. For example, if it's a Sphere 0 location, or only locked by Wanderer items. So if you have a Kokiri Sword in Sphere 0, you'll never have a hint that says, there's nothing that unlocks the way to the Kokiri Sword, or anything like that. As you get familiar with these hints, you'll be able to use these to your advantage to try and figure out what items might be deep in the seed, and what items might be shallow in the seed, and maybe what items could be bait and potentially skippable. I think this is going to add a whole new dimension to understanding the logic, and it's going to be really rewarding for players that are thinking about the sequencing of items. I cannot wait to see all the crazy plays that these hints are going to open up. I mentioned earlier that Wanderer hints also have a 50% chance of being a Wanderer unlock hint. So let's talk about that now. In Season 1 of Triforce Blitz, the Wanderer hints pointed to a location that had some sort of optional item that was used on the playthrough to finish the seed, but was not logically required to beat the seed. And what that did in practice was hint a ton of bait items, and one of the challenges was you never really knew for sure if it was bait until you got baited. So now we are adding a way to potentially know whether these Wanderer items are bait or not. They say that the Megaton Hammer unlocks the Wanderer's way to a hookshot. So in this hint, it means that a Wanderer hookshot is logically locked by the Megaton Hammer. So the Megaton Hammer is required in order to get to at least one of the available hookshots. And in the second hint, they say that the Lens of Truth unlocks the Wanderer's way to a Zora scale. That means there is a Wanderer Zora scale that is logically locked behind the Lens of Truth. I'm sure you really are looking forward to playing whatever seed generated that hint, but that might indicate to you that there's some crazy Wanderer chain leading you to a scale that you might not want to follow. Let's talk more about the details of Wanderer unlock hints. The second item in a Wanderer unlock hint is guaranteed to be Wanderer and not Path. So if we think back to the previous slide, the hookshot and the Zora scale are guaranteed to be Wanderer items, and they're guaranteed not to be Path. So that in itself can be potentially very useful information, especially in the first example where you know right off the bat there is a Wanderer hookshot. So that could be important when trying to calculate path counts, and it's always a challenge sometimes to know whether your bomb bag or whether your hook shot or your strength upgrades are actually path or whether they're wanderer. However, the first item can either be wanderer or path. So you can have path items being the first item in the hint, but path items can never be the second item in a wanderer hint. The list of hintable wanderer items comes from the playthrough location list, which is the same as Season 1. We're still using the same playthrough algorithm that is unreliable, sorry, but at least with these hints, hopefully there will be a little bit more ability to avoid some of the crazy bait chains. These use the same weighting logic as unlock hints, so wanderer items that are locked behind a lot of items are more likely to be chosen for hints, basically a bias towards late game items for these hints. Racing, hooray! If you are new to Triforce Blitz, here are some pointers on racing and the community. First, make sure to get the Triforce Blitz role on the OT Randomizer Discord so that you get pings when live races are being organized. If you don't have time to put together a live race, there is a seed of the day on www.triforceblitz.com, which is a daily async race. We post times and spoiler comments in the Triforce Blitz SOTD channel, so take advantage of the convenience of the seed of the day whenever it works for you. If you're new to Triforce Blitz, I highly recommend going to the website, generating a seed or two, and downloading the spoiler log. It's a great way to get familiar with the hint distribution and learn the basics without worrying about your execution. Another cool feature of the site is the ability to link a seed with a race time room. You can automatically unlock the spoiler log of a seed when the race finishes. This is a super cool feature. It's only available with Triforce Blitz at the moment, and a special shout out to Spell, who did 100% of the work to make the website and all of the innovative features on there. And with that, I will hand it off to me, live in the present. Take it away, me.